Welcome to the Inside Out Life podcast. I'm Barry Samuel. The Inside Out podcast, where it's all about becoming the best version of yourself in order to chart your own path in life, to live your optimal life, freedom from fear and blocks, to take back control and claim your power, and shine your authentic self, helping set you up for success. Coming up on today's show, I'm going to be talking about the human experience as laid out by the Buddhist philosophy of pain and suffering in the human experience. Talk about some of my own experience in navigating that arena. And also, quite connected, is the arena of emotional intelligence, or EQ, and understanding how that can really give you your edge in terms of interpersonal and life success. So I want to tell you about my week to start off, and you'll see how that ties in with today's topic of pain and suffering, as noted the mantra of the Buddhists, that it's part of our human experience in our very short time here visiting on this large physical on this large physical mass, this place that we call planet Earth. So it's a mental health awareness week locally, and it's a really big campaign. It's important for obvious reasons, and as we try to push the needle forward in creating, to me, what is ultimately the bottom line, which is not only compassion and empathy and understanding, but in terms of the preventative side, and that is creating a safe space, safe environment for people not to live in fear and to feel easily triggered, traumatized, a sense of blame and shame. So this week, as I mentioned, I was visiting with some students. We were talking about healthy eating. More specifically, we were giving a class presentation for students, mostly 16 years old. And really their knowledge of health and well-being impressed me. If I had to flash back to when I was 16 years old, which was a while ago now, I don't think the average person knows nearly as much as the average 16-year-old, or I should say knew nearly as much as 16-year-olds do today within the health and wellness arena. Now, I will say that, as we know all too well, social media casts an unrelenting amount of information that, in order to filter through it, is a challenge. So we're definitely in the age of information, but as we have discussed and read about, some of this information is really questionable and just outright wrong. So we have to be, really cautious and careful in terms of that. So, but I will say, on a positive side, during this mental health awareness day, it was my observation that these students were quite impressive in their knowledge base, not necessarily confident and confirmed in their understandings, but so hopefully we created a good experience for them as Inside Out. And so later that same day, interestingly, I went to see an event. Basically, it was centered around a documentary on the life of American comedian and actor Robin Williams. And I think whether you're 16 years old or 60 years old, you've probably heard the name. And I believe it was back in 2014 he died, and there was some question about how he died. Was it an overdose? Did he die by suicide? We're not supposed to say commit suicide. We say die by suicide. There are legal implications, as I understood it, using that terminology nowadays. Did he have Parkinson's or another disease? Louis something. Forgive me, I can't think of the precise name of the other disease that he was thought to have. It was a tragic story, as well as a bit of a memorial celebration of his remarkable body of work. And it was presented under the umbrella of a mental health event and day. And so there were a couple of local comedians, very well spoken, and moderator, as well as a medical doctor specializing in workplace mental health. So it was kind of an interesting panel for sure, and the program that led up to that sort of wrap-up session started off with, it was sort of bookends. So before the screening of the film, we had a couple of speakers, followed by a musical performance by a group called Workmen. And this particular group really struck a chord, no pun intended. They performed for us, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that each member of this group is suffering from some form of mental illness. And so that really added some richness to the event for sure. And they performed Amy Winehouse's a cover of her track Rehab. So not to be insensitive, but it just caught us off by surprise, and some of us had a good chuckle over that surprise factor. So it was kind of the range of emotions. Here we got the feature of Robin Williams, and I do recall his stand-up comedy. He's one of the all-time greats in terms of talent and speed and wit and characters. One of the things that I really enjoyed is how he talked about always wanting to take risks, and that's what I was reminded of in terms of insight into his training as a performer. But he suffered from addiction issues, and that was his ultimate undoing. What I didn't know is he was with John Belushi on the night of John Belushi's death, who was an American comedian who died of a drug overdose when he was only 30-something years old, after growing famous for his role on Saturday Night Live and, of course, the movie Animal House. So we had A-list celebrities featured in this film, all extolling the incredible brilliance of Robin, and at the same time you could tell in their heart they were hurting, and especially the kids that were left behind. His oldest son was this sort of spokesperson for the other two kids as well, and just saying how a hole was left in their heart. So there's basically, there's certainly a darkness that prevails. I recall so fondly his dramatic acting, particularly in Dead Poets Society and the film Good Will Hunting. And is with Dead Poets Society, there's the famous line Carpe Diem, which of course is Latin for seize the day. And I remember writing that after seeing that movie and posting it on the wall in my room. And occasionally I would glance over and remind myself to be sparked and moved by that, because at the time that's what it was doing for me. And Good Will Hunting was, the relationship between Robin Williams' character as the psychotherapist. He was definitely a mental health professional. He may not have technically been a psychotherapist. He may have been a psychologist, where he was in private practice, and would have counseling talk therapy sessions with, I believe the character's name was Will, played by Matt Damon. And just to kind of watch, it was just such a magical thing to watch the relationship and how the two of them were both changed because of that relationship, and just the life jewels and moments. So that was, I'm sort of hovering around these two films because they really moved me, and they did that for millions of people. And artists, as the panel discussed, Mary Walsh, one of the comedians, Jessica Holmes, one of the other comedians, we're talking about pain, being an artist is to sort of be okay with the fact that you're going to struggle. It's going to be a struggle. And being brave and bold. And interestingly, if you were to analyze it, performers, especially those who have the remarkable strength and resilience to do a stand-up comedy routine, which is kind of like being completely naked and bare with your being, as you kind of are up there armless and defenseless, revealing a very vulnerable side of yourself. It's to share, you have to be extremely bold, and it's the realness that people are drawn to, and it's how that's channeled. And in his case, I think the film gave the impression that he was seeking some kind of validation, and unfortunately lost a bit of a grip on his own control because of the addictions. And it was this cycle where he, seemingly needed to perform more and felt maybe weaker, and it was his way of relating and validating. So again, the talk generalized to how, for artists, they live in that kind of emotional place and painful place. And Jessica Holmes, the first thing out of her mouth was basically that her therapist tells her, well, this is a way to cope with things, and don't quote me exactly, but she was referencing the fact that she sees a therapist regularly. And it's normal to talk to somebody about your health, to kind of bounce things off of someone is a healthy thing to do. So it's really interesting. I went with a very close childhood friend of mine, and he was very quick-witted, talented performer in his own right. And these are the things that we talked about as well, as just these observations that the artist is generally coming from a pretty vulnerable place, and kind of also at the same time trying to be honest with themselves, which is, again, it's a difficult struggle. So we're always amazed and so often inspired that people are able to do this. You're listening to the Inside Out Life podcast, and I'm Barry Samuel. I just want to remind you of those two things. And it's always a pleasure to speak to you and just share. And I've actually a number of times tried my hand at being a stand-up comedian, and I use the word try as the buzzword, and it's a terrifying thing. It is extremely terrifying. But at the same time, you can kind of get a sense that if something goes over well, it's going to give you such endorphins and serotonin, and it's just an awesome biochemical response to being validated, to building your ego and your confidence, and hopefully in a healthy and appropriate way. So I wanted to talk about the pain, the suffering, the human experience that the Buddhists talk about, is that we come in to visit this planet, because that's what we're doing, is we're visiting, and hopefully get the most zest out of life and living, being adventuresome, setting goals for growth and change, and doing things that scare us a little bit to stretch ourselves, and always wanting to yearn for something new, and having loving relationships, being part of a community, having a family, having a rich life experience. But it doesn't go unscathed. And that's the point, is, we're going to be confronted with darkness. We're going to be confronted with days where we don't feel so great. It's inevitable. And so, that's some of the real talk. And I'm not trying to be a downer, depressing for people. It's how we kind of manage our reality and expectations. And it's a myriad of emotions that, as part of the human experience, that's what we feel, is anger, joy, happiness, laughter, sorrow. And it's part of that, the yin and yang, in that we can't really appreciate or enjoy the highs and the successes and those wins without having to come through some of the challenging things. And we're all going to have our challenges, and I want to once again put it out there that as much as the next person beside you on the bus on your commute, beside you in the lane in the car next to you, in the fancy car, the person in your village with a large family, your neighbor, your coworker, as much as things seem simple and easy for them and happy and upbeat all the time, that's not the whole story. It may be right now, but ultimately people are going to face new or repeated experiences and moments that are challenging to deal with. And so, how do we take back control? We want to live our optimal life. It's freedom from fear and triggering traumas, to push back psychological blocks, and take back control and claim our power. Shine, be our authentic self, and not be afraid to put ourselves out there, and to get back to living and being on the path. And that's where the mastery is going to come in. So, again, I did my years of stand-up, and now you're probably saying to me, why aren't you kind of telling us, an anecdote or some nugget about it? I can tell you that there was, there was a moment. I was probably half a dozen times giving it a try, and we were talking about the new millennium. It was part of my bit, and it's like how we were going to prepare for the crash of all technology. We went from 1999 to 2000, Y2K, and it was filling the bathtub, getting the flashlights and the candles, and basically the generator, and it was just like that was part of the social commentary and what was happening historically at that time. That was one event. Another time I just kind of dressed up in this crazy outfit, colorful, like some kind of headscarf, sunglasses, and this long onesie. And it didn't have the feet in it, didn't have the legs and the feet, but it was just this long, there's a mimosa. What is the name of that like onesie, that nighttime onesie that you might see an older lady wearing? The name escapes me at the moment. I believe it starts with an M. So it was, maybe the male version of that. Actually, it's very unisex. So that was a little bit ridiculous. And another time, I remember getting up there and just my frame of mind was not the best, and I just thought, I'm angry. I'm angry at everything, anyone, and myself, first and foremost. And so I just deliberately bombed and sabotaged myself. And yeah, it was a little embarrassing, but we have these moments, and it's picking yourself up and learning from it and looking back, and hopefully being able to grow and maybe even laugh at it. And I had some bravado at the time, in the sense that it was a laughable experience, but that wasn't truly being honest with myself. So that was over a span of probably a few years in all, that I bravely took to the stage half a dozen times. But doing presentations, after doing what I consider to be that naked exercise of baring your soul and being unarmed and defenseless on stage, coming through that, I definitely had a sense of confidence in the ability to kind of command an audience, and so that was very useful. And so it was challenging myself, and I would recommend it without a doubt. Doing an individual pursuit, and putting yourself out there. Now, you don't have to tell the world every personal detail about yourself. I'm not suggesting that. But in some sense of proving to yourself, if you like, that you can take on a challenge that will help make you better. So, putting in that context, it's something that I would absolutely 100% endorse, is be bold, take the risk, do something that scares the shit out of you, and you'll come out of it that much stronger. You may not recognize it instantly, but it's definitely a character builder. So yeah, I wanted to talk about the challenges in life and the fact that we're all going to be faced with some darkness in our lives. Imagine when you lose a parent. Today, knock on wood, my health is good, and I hope certainly that you listening to this show, the same is for you. But think about it, like tomorrow could be a much worse day for me and for you. So let's be in the moment and understand that it's helpful to have some gratitude in terms of a coping mechanism. But also let's push through, be bold and brave, become unstuck, take a step, and set goals for growth and change, to set a self-contract, to move forward, to live a healthy lifestyle. And spark and channel motivation for the things that you want to do that you've been thinking about doing for a while. And it's, let's not quit on our goals. And one of the most important goals is deciding that you want to orient your lifestyle in a way that you have positive, healthy habits and behaviors. Get that as foundation, which will help you to surpass many goals and expectations. Applying ourselves in a steady, consistent way, being planned out and organized, realistic about goals. Once again, remind you that you're listening to the Inside Out Life podcast, where it's all about becoming the best version of yourself in order to chart your own path in life. And just trying to share some pearls of wisdom, hopefully today, or just a sensible reminder that we all are going to experience challenges. And when you look at the next person, even if it seems like they're in all their glory, they're going to have their own challenges if they haven't experienced it already. And the key for us is to focus on yourself. That if you apply yourself and be clear on what you need and a steady way to do it, then you will be successful and prevail. The other topic, relating today that I just wanted to touch on was the area of emotional intelligence. And for a lot of people, they are hearing about it for the first time. But if you look at many high performers, many leaders, those that are steady-handed, they're always trying to improve themselves. And so often, the area of emotional intelligence, or EQ, is what gives you that sense of supreme mastery. And that is, feeling your emotions and being self-aware and being okay with that. Spending time with yourself to be mindful, to meditate, to focus on one thing, to do your practices accrued over thousands of hours to become a specialist. Is all going to help you to excel and be exceptional in one area, but particularly being okay with being on your own and not being comfortable all the time, because that's where the shifts will start to happen. And you want to be committed to that, do the work. And so, emotional intelligence is going to be a real arsenal for you in your chest of tools that you can pull out. And so I would say do some research in that area, because really it's understanding the human psyche to a large extent is why are people behaving the way they're behaving. Well, they have a certain mindset, they have a certain personality, but it's as part of the human experience. Some things are more so with emotions just isolated to a certain period of time. We're in highs, we're in lows, and we want to understand within ourselves what's taking place, to neither get too high and disconnected or too low and feeling too extreme and to excess in that darkness. So have the perspective that the sun will come up tomorrow, it's a new day and a fresh start, that you've your body of work, the things that you've overcome, the ways that you've excelled, and the accomplishments that you've had to surprise yourself and other people. I mean, it's really remarkable, because it's all about you comparing to you. Again, not the person in the car next to you, not the person in the bus next to you, not your neighbor, not the person next to you in your class or your coworker. It's understanding your own challenge in the moment today, and every day trying to be a little bit better than the day before. And if you add that up, those small steps of realistic goals or habits and behaviors a little bit better every day, then guess what? You do 365 of those, and it'll be just incredible what you can accomplish for yourself to set yourself up for success. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover for today's show, and just share with you some thoughts with respect to the past week. And again, the human experience, as the Buddhists tell us, pain and suffering is inevitable, and but healing and coping, these are ways that we can kind of get through it, and being the master in our own lives and charting your own path in life is something that we can take control back on when we lose our way. And through EQ and emotional intelligence, we can understand when we have those little blips where the narrative in our head is telling us that we're no good, we should blame ourselves, we should feel shameful, that we're not capable of anything. It's all a lie. It's that kind of shaming and blame is the voice in our head associated with the emotions. And those emotions, you can get back control. It's important that you have that, again, the foundation of a healthy lifestyle, to get back that control, to improve your life through discipline, through habits and steady behaviors, and to do the work and commitment. So as I'm signing off on this edition of the Inside Out Life podcast, I want to wish for you that you take those small, steady steps and remember some of the imperfections. I want to finish with 2 references to 2 performances by Robin Williams in those brilliant, poignant films, Dead Poets Society and Good Will Hunting. In that one-to-one relationship between the doctor and Will, or Matt Damon's character, he spoke very highly of his own imperfections, and really how that's the essence of life in so many ways, is that we embrace our own vulnerability and authenticity. And of course, to finish on a positive note, I want to say once again that Latin phrase, Carpe Diem, to you as you set forward with a brave and bold step. And just let you know that if you want to reach out for any kind of discussion on these topics, you can drop a line to Barry, Barry, at InsideOutStudio.ca, and I will be happy to read your message and respond at just my earliest convenience. And once again, it's a pleasure to be on this journey with you. Have a great day.